Welcome back to the Rise Factor Conversations for Growth. Today, I have a special lady who I've been following her journey for some time and had the absolute pleasure with working with her. So, welcome, Alice, to the Rise Factor.
Thank you, Sarah. I'm super excited to be here today.
Super excited. We had to reschedule a couple of times, but that's what happens. That's life, yeah. And I really love that, we had a chat and we came up with today talking about from hustle to harmony. So I'm really excited to share with our BDM community this topic because I think it's something that's going to really help with the mindset and strategies for our BDM community. But Alice, for those that do not know who you are, where you're from, who is Alice?
Thanks, Sarah. I am born and bred in the Western suburbs. I have one 16-year-old son, and I'm a big dog lover and a bit of a coffee snob. I wear my heart on my sleeves, and definitely could say that I'm a very passionate person.
I can absolutely testament and agree to all of those. And you're in Victoria. So for those that don't know, you do base yourself in Victoria, and you have a pretty new puppy. So tell us more about your dog.
I do. So I have got a 7-month-old American Staffy.
Mhm.
I'm a bit of a fur love, and I not only love, having a dog, but I found that having a dog also gets me out and pushes me out into nature,
Mm,
which has taken me a little while, but I've realized definitely helps ground me and reset me.
for sure. I love that. You're such a connected person. So Alice, obviously I know your journey and especially just watching your next level growth now, but I would love to dive deep because you've worn many different hats in your career, won some awards recently. So tell us how your journey has been. Like where did it start, the different hats that you had and now what your roles and responsibilities are.
Sure. So I started in real estate in 2006. So it's been a little while. So I was a sales PA to our now director. And I did that role for about 2 years, and I loved it. And then I fell pregnant with my son. And I guess my vision at the time was to be a stay-at-home mum. So I took a break from real estate for about 2.5 years. I missed every day of it. And I realized that you can be a mum, but also have a career. And so I decided to get back into real estate. However, at the time, my mindset was very much of, oh, well, rentals don't do any after hours. So why don't I give rentals a go?
Mm.
So I jumped into property management and I had a portfolio of about 180 properties. So back in the day, you'd walk into the office, you were handed 180 properties, and off you go. It's sink or swim. So I very quickly learned early on, probably my first week in property management, I walked into a portfolio and I had 7 VCAT hearings.
Wow.
And I will never forget the first hearing that I walked into at the Werribee Courts. I showed up with a tenant ledger that I had gone through with a red pen and ruler. And every day that the tenant was late with their rent, I'd actually write on there, how many days late they were. And the member pulled me up at the beginning of the hearing and said to me, "Where's your summary of proofs?" And I said, "What's that?" So I think that for me was a huge eye opener because I then went back and realized that I needed some, huge amount of training.
Mm.
So back then, when I didn't really have a leader or a mentor in the office, I would call Consumer Affairs. I bought myself an annotated version of the Residential Tenancies Act, and that was basically my life. So when my son was napping on the weekends, I was reading the Residential Tenancies Act. So I probably did that for a little while when I realised that I had, strengths and weaknesses in being in property management. And I decided that I would like to dive in and work more on my strengths. And so that's generally where I found my love and passion for the new business and being a BDM. So my director at the time was very supportive. Back then, there wasn't too many roles as BDM. So for him in the business, it was definitely a new role. So we had to try and transition, going from property management to BDM. But because it was a small business and we were starting organically, I still obviously had to be, hands on. So going through that transition, it was quite difficult for me because I was still learning a lot of new things. But then I obviously had a fair bit of the role that I really enjoyed because I had that passion and what filled my cup. So I was with that business for 8, almost 9 years. I started with 120 properties, and I left the business with 1,095 properties.
Amazing.
Yeah, and I got to work with some amazing property managers. Obviously, did a lot of head of department role. So it was great. I really, really enjoyed it. But definitely I had my ups and downs in that journey.
Mm. So tell me about the downs first.
Yeah.
Let's go for the downs because you've experienced burnt out and the hustle and it's real and I think we don't
Mm.
talk about it enough and we want to make sure that BDMs that are new or even that have been in the industry for a long time don't get stuck in being that hustle and they have to work these ridiculous hours. And so tell us about that burnout, what you experience and how you overcome it, Alice.
Yes. Well, look, to be honest, for the first 12 years, that's what I was doing. I'd take every call, whether it was after hours, on the weekend when I was with my son, I was doing all of that. I felt that I hit a certain amount of personal bests and I always wanted to outdo myself. I didn't find the pressure externally from, directors or any staff. I found the pressure for myself because I think once you get to a certain level, it's no longer you become it's expected of you then, because if you're used to doing certain numbers month in month out, it's almost an expectation.
Yep.
So I found, a real buzz in obviously hitting personal bests, but I found doing that over a long period of time, it started to affect me. And I didn't realize it at first. It took quite a few years for it to affect me. And once it did, unfortunately, I hit burnout pretty bad, to the point where I had to have external help. And at the time, because I had never heard of anybody going through that or no one ever spoke about it, I was quite embarrassed about it. So I went from being someone who was really outgoing, wanted to see everyone in person, I'd answer my phone, to real hibernation. I struggled to answer my phone. I struggled to leave the house. And that for me was really embarrassing moment. So I definitely had to dive deep and do a lot of soul searching. And now I look back, I'm actually really, really grateful for hitting rock bottom, which I know sounds a little bit crazy, but I'm very grateful for it because I think it showed me a couple of things. But one, if I'm not okay, I can't do those sorts of numbers. I'm not a good BDM. I'm not a good friend. I'm not a good mum. I'm not a good partner. So it was a huge turning point for my life. It definitely took a little while to figure out the balance. But now I look back and I think, oh my gosh, I don't know how you sustained at that pace for the amount of years that I did.
For sure. Yeah. So tell us about some of the boundaries that you have in place now, because you're still doing really well, Alice, in terms of numbers and your role and responsibilities. Showing up, doing all of the right things in the BDM world. So how do you now sustain that more harmonious place in a BDM role? Like, let's explore that.
So, one thing I have put in place are boundaries. So, this was very hard for me because I'm one of those yes people and I don't like to turn anyone away.
Mm.
But I've learned that now, if you do put certain boundaries in place, people's expectations are set from the beginning.
Mhm.
And it also shows them that you respect yourself enough to put these boundaries in place. So, something I felt helped for me is, the after hours. I might still check my emails or listen to voicemails. But now, if I respond, I make sure that I do a scheduled send. So that way they know that between the hours of 9 and 5:30, I will always get back to you.
Mm.
Every now and then I have slipped up if I don't have anything on and I get an after hours call, I might take it, but very rarely compared to when I didn't put boundaries in place and I would continuously answer and respond to people.
Yeah, for
So
sure.
that was a huge one for me. I also found that by doing that, it actually started to give me some confidence back. I realized my self worth and I thought, well, I know what I can give to my clients. And if they're happy to, wait for me to respond, I know that I will give them the best advice. I know that they're going to be in good hands.
Mm.
So, the same with any other service. If you go to see a good doctor or a good lawyer, you can't get in, then and there. You'll
Yeah.
always get responded to, but I feel it's very much the same now in real estate. If you want a good real estate agent, it doesn't mean that they're going to drop everything for you.
For sure. And like I love that you mentioned that because I feel like and I actually see this and I don't necessarily agree with it. And I see, oh, the agent that gets to someone first is the agent that's going to win. And you have to respond and people want things like yesterday. And I know to a sense that as society, like we are getting a bit impatient. We need to be efficient. But also I think that it's important that we look after our health. And in property management, we're not just dealing with one client at a time, right? So if you're jumping on that client or perhaps even appearing desperate, or you're answering your phone at 10 o'clock at night when the property managers aren't going to work at 10 o'clock at night, like what you said earlier, it's setting unrealistic expectations for that client journey. And I'm just going to be honest. And like this morning, I had to jump on a Zoom with my son, right? Because I had to do what I had to do. And I think as well as like you're a mum, so many property managers are mums, right, in our industry. And to be able to have a conversation with a potential client saying, I'm a mum, like I have my boundary that after 5:30, I'm with my family. And I
Yeah.
think there's that level of respect then as well that you get from somebody else when you place that boundary and explain why that boundary is in place. Would you agree with that?
100% agree with that, Sarah. And I know it's taken me years to get to this because I don't think it was as accepted or as spoken about when I first started. I don't know if it was more something that came later on or after COVID, but I would prefer to deal with somebody real and authentic than, somebody who isn't.
Yeah, for
And
sure.
that to me shows that if you're going to jump on a Zoom with your son, I think that's very relatable. And that to me shows that you're not superwoman, you're human like all of
Yeah.
us.
Yeah, for sure. Absolutely agree. And, like you, Alice, as a BDM, I remember sometimes getting home for an appraisal at 8 o'clock at night and starting the day at 8 a.m. in the morning. And I was majority of days the first one in the office before any of the sales agents or directors. And I look back and go, what for? Why did I do that to myself? And at that time, like you, I lacked my values. I lacked my boundaries. I would say on the outside, I appeared successful and happy, but I was just working and I love my work. I always have, but there's so much more to life than just our work. And people are going to remember us by what we believe in and the impact we have. And I think if we remember that we work in property management, it's not just about the properties, it's about the people. And we all have our beliefs and our own lives that we live. So it's absolutely okay to have those boundaries and speak to your clients. And I think while we're discussing this as well, Alice, for any BDMs listening that are new, go and discover the values of the business and make sure that how you are operating aligns with the values of the business. Because I know a lot of values, some of businesses are like family orientated. So it's like, cool, if that's the value of the business, it's family orientated. Why are you working at 7 o'clock at night when you're meant to be with your family? It's a great, just pause and reflect on that. Yeah.
Yes.
So schedule send, you've got your boundaries. What does your ideal week look like now, Alice, in terms of BDM? Because you do have a lot of responsibility still, and you
Yes.
do end up always getting it done and still showing up. So what does an ideal week look like for Alice in the BDM role?
So my ideal week can change from time to time. I'll give you an example. I generally block out certain things in my week where, the non-negotiables, which is what I learned from your program.
Mhm.
So basically, I have my ideal week set out where I make sure that I'm always contacting clients back, within a timely manner. I allow time for me to do my admin. I'm a little bit old school and I do a lot of the admin side of it as well. But I also find that it can change depending on what's going on. So, for example, yesterday I had planned to be in front of the computer for most of the day to do callbacks. However, I ended up getting a lot of phone calls for people looking for appraisals. So I had to shift my day around. I still got all of it done,
Yeah.
but I had to learn to be a little bit more adaptable and not set in stone for just, my ideal week, what was booked in.
Mhm.
But I think having that ideal week definitely helps you to get everything done. And at least it sets you up where you're focused and you know what you have to do. I find that when you don't have an ideal week is when it was easy for me to get lost track of time and I forget a lot of the things I should be doing, all the non-negotiable tasks.
Yeah, I love that you mentioned that. I think it's a great key point to bring up because we can have an ideal week, but the ideal week is then we don't have to be stringent. And go, oh, we have to do this, we have to do this. It's to look at well, these are the things that we need to do daily to keep ensuring that we are productive and not going back into a reactive state. Because as BDMs, we know we can get caught up in yes, doing appraisals and having those meetings, but then the prospecting falls behind, and then if we're not prospecting or nurturing our database, then it can impact the next month. So I love that you mentioned prioritizing. So still getting the things done in the week that you've all planned to get done, but you've just pivoted, adapted, and prioritized on where those needed to be so that it still gets done, but you've just had to shift things around. So I think that's a really great note for anyone listening because Alice, at the end of the day, every day and every week, you're not showing up and winging it now. You've got your
Yes.
non-negotiables, you know what you need to do to get that consistency and results. Because I remember my director, he always said, if you're having a shit month this month, go back to the month before and look at what you did. Right. And you probably know, like I teach that to you guys, like what you do today manifests your tomorrow, right? I don't use like the words you shit month, but because it's looking at, yeah, what are we doing today that's going to help our future selves, right? And even going back to what you spoke about earlier, like you going through what you went through, finding the lesson in that has helped you to become the version of Alice is today. And the things that you do today, like being on this podcast, another version of Alice is going to thank the version of Alice today jumping on this podcast. So it's just beautiful how every day there's lessons and opportunities, but we need to take the time to pause and reflect to find those lessons and those opportunities in what we do. So, Alice, what's one goal this year like that you would love to tick off your vision board?
So basically, I feel that the last 2 years I've really put my head down, worked really, really hard. So for me, a goal this year is to book in a holiday.
Amazing, amazing. Where would you like to go? Where's your dream holiday?
So a lot of people have been to Bali and I have actually never been.
Okay. Yeah.
So I would like to do a holiday that's in nature, that's relaxed,
Mm.
because I've only ever done holidays that have been on the go from tourist attraction to tourist attraction. So I think it's something that might be a little bit in my personality, the go, go, go.
Yep.
So I'm trying to change that in all aspects of my life and have that balanced out a lot better.
Yes, I love that. And that goes with the theme of today, from hustle to harmony. Lastly, Alice, for anyone who is listening today, what do you think is one thing that a BDM should prioritize every week
Yep.
for whether it's personal or professional, or you can do both? What do you think would be that?
So, for me personally, something that I found very important that's worked really well for me is finding one thing about yourself that you can be an expert on.
Mm,
So, for me, I find that it's very easy to hustle and not stop and have a look at what's going on in the industry. So I'm very, very big on learning legislation. I feel that if you have a good BDM that can answer any question about the industry, regardless whether you have a portfolio or not, that to me is going to definitely make you stand out from the crowd.
Yeah.
So I make sure every week, at least once a week, at the bare minimum, I am looking at what's going on in the industry, what's coming in the future, whether it's statistics, regulations, new tech that's coming out. So I find that has been a huge benefit for me. I know that I can go out to an appraisal and be up against a property manager, and I know that I'll be able to answer any question just as if I had a portfolio.
I love that. I love that you said pick one thing and be an expert on that. And I think we get so caught up in doing all the things, but it's like, what does Alice want to be known for? Like, if you're going up against, three other agents, what are they going to remember you by? So I love that you said that, be an expert on that one thing. And what about personally then? What do you think is one thing that you would suggest BDMs to do, outside of work that helps them, move forward in a great way?
Yeah. So I definitely find doing one activity of mindfulness.
Mm.
Now, when I say mindfulness, I don't mean you have to sit there and meditate. I don't meditate, even though I think I'd like to try it.
Yeah.
That to me, I learned is very different for everybody. I have now found that I can do a walk in nature. So, not, around the block, I mean in the bush, with the trees, the birds. I can do a walk in that environment and finish that and feel like I've had a full day off.
I love that. Intentional solitude.
Yes, that's the best way to put it.
Yeah,
Yes.
intentional solitude. I love that. And it actually gave me an idea. And if anyone listens to this, I'd love for you to let me know. But I was actually thinking because meditation was something that really did help me at the tail end of my BDM career and now in my life. So let me know, BDMs, if it's something that would interest you if I was to organize an online meditation, to see if that is something that could help you and maybe it could be a weekly thing. So let me know. Alice, are you up for it?
Yeah, I am actually, because again, it'll be scheduled in my diary like an appointment. And if it's in my diary, it doesn't get cancelled or
Yeah.
changed.
I love that. Alice, thank you for coming on. What I love about you, and that's why I wanted you to be on, not just the fact that you've done my program and you're someone who has definitely implemented so much. It's you are so raw, you are so passionate, and that does show. And you have done so much, and I know we can't cover it all today, but definitely are a high performer, a high achiever, but you do it with such grace and such harmony. And that's why I really wanted you to come on and share your wisdom and your love to our BDM community because you just hold so much space for other people. So thank you for joining me today in what I know other people are going to take away so much from it and feel your love and your passion for the industry.
Thank you so much, Sarah. I really appreciate it. And thank you for doing what you're doing, because if I had something like this when I started 18 years ago, I think it would have changed my journey. And I think what you're doing is going to help so many people out there not only be successful, but stay in the industry with longevity, because I think we're losing that. So thank you.
Oh, thank you, lovely. And as always, team, keep rising, and I'll pop Alice's details below if you would like to connect with her further.